It's a good tuna, but I think I paid too much.
I always wear my mask and wash my hands after going home.
I am the king of the ring.
Welcome to the Japan What Podcast, episode 187. And I'm your host, Matthew, PMBigelow.com. And I'm coming at you from the Aizumicho Studios in Shinjuku, Tokyo, Japan. The Ornament of Asia. Covering Japan Society 5.0, AR market trends, rising conflict in the Indo-Pacific, depopulation, migration, and more. And we thank you for coming to today's show. Busy show as always today, recording on November 5th, 2024, releasing on the same day. So nuisance streaming are mostly just irritating people sort of jumping around in front of a place they shouldn't be. Because Japan is such a budget travel destination now, it attracts a lot of nuisance streamers. One such nuisance streamer who is the most talented nuisance streamer the world has ever seen, his name is Johnny Somali. And a few months ago, a few times, I think he was seen gallivanting around Japan, harassing locals for online likes and reputation and money and stuff like that. And he really had perfected the art of nuisance streaming. I can't stand the guy, and that's the point. But I mean, he really brought it to the next level. I mean, like I said, sometimes you hear about nuisance streaming and maybe it's just somebody dancing in front of a temple and they do some sort of, they go against some sort of social moray where they point their finger at the roof of the temple and, oh, it's so bad. But yeah, okay. The fact that they're filming it is one thing. But Johnny Somali he would put a Bluetooth speaker on his chest, hook it up to a streaming service, and his listeners or fans would make him go into restaurants and they would play like really loud death metal music or people screaming. He would walk around the streets just screaming. And eventually he got caught up by the police in Japan. And then he I think what happens most of the time with most of these annoying gaijins that come to Japan and maybe break a few laws is instead of burdening the taxpayer with jailing the person for, an extreme amounts of time or letting them back out after a few years, they just say, we'll drop all the charges, but you can never come back to Japan ever again in your life. Take it or leave it. Most of them take it and they never come back. But Johnny Somali then becomes somebody else's problem. And that's what happened in Korea, where Johnny Somali began the same antics in South Korea, of course. And the South Koreans are a little bit more jittery than the Japanese because they have the colonization of Japan on one side, the constant, power imbalance of China by the other. A lot of so they're a little bit more on edge, I think it's safe to say. And the men all go through mandatory military training for a few years of their lives too. So they're a bit more they're a bit more used to the old fisticuffs. So anyways, Johnny Somali is going around Korea, and eventually people following him on stream triangulate his whereabouts, and they would go and ambush him and like punch him in the face and chase him down. This happened a few times. And what happened was the police arrested Johnny Somali and not the Koreans for attacking him. And Johnny Somali might be in a Korean prison for a very long time. And I don't think they have the same policies there as they do in Japan. So Johnny Somali might become a permanent South Korea problem. But this is the Japan What Podcast. Why are we talking about that here? Well, I am getting into it. Another noticing thing I noticed was this woman who filmed herself having sex with 101 men in one day. And she's pretty hot, but she's like doing like a handheld phone thing. Hello, everybody. I'm going to get railed by 100 men in one day. And it turns out to be 101 men. And she's just talking about it as if it's fine and dandy. Now, what this is all leading into is this what we get for what we did to the kids during COVID? Because I've been talking about the pendulum of karma. It swang one way during COVID, We locked up all the kids. We put them in masks. We forbade them from developing normal social behaviors. A lot of them, the only places they could go was into the internet, into their phones, and it's all based on apps and social networks and algorithms now. And it kind of maybe created a new type of young person. They're very different from when I was a young person. We were driving around listening to Metallica. I started only drinking when I was like 18, 19, and then until now. And and I don't drink a lot anymore, by the way. So it's like, yeah, if you're a musician in your 20s and you're playing around Tokyo and you got a good job, it's like, well, maybe there's some people that want to have fun with you. Like, okay, let's go have some fun. But anyways, the new young people, they grew up with the algorithms in their phones, and they're not typing on screens. They're not typing on computers. They're not attaching cables together. It's just this phone that comes in with advanced algorithms that socially program you everywhere you go. And most parents are in on it as well, but the parents have a frame of reference. Anyways, so with this sort of normalization of, and it's not like they're ashamed. That's the weird thing. Like maybe there are women that would go and have sex with 100 dudes, but it would be on the down low. And it would be maybe a rumor, but it wouldn't be like, hello, good morning, everybody. It's me. I'm going to get railed by 100 guys today. All right. And it's like maybe this sort of like everything has to be smiley and nice for us to get the likes and social approval, even if it's massive social delinquent behavior. And Johnny Somali is the same way. He's always smiling. He's always having a good time, even when he gets his listeners to blast out pornography audio through his Bluetooth speakers attached to his chest in a restaurant in the middle of Osaka. It's like, ha, 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 everything's just fine and dandy. So is this the karma that we get for what us as a society did to the youth growing up? Now, you say, well, that's some Aussie lady and that's some kind of American Somali dude. I'm not sure if it's Somali, but his name is his pen name. His pseudonym is Johnny Somali. Very intellectual guy there. But in Japan, it might be happening as well. And so to kind of get into the thick of it here, and most of this sort of activism, not that those other two people are activism, but a lot of youth activism, a lot of the BLM, the Black Lives Matter, the Enviro people, it hasn't really been so big in Japan until now. And I wonder if this has to deal with the fact that we are looking at people that grew up with internet and lockdowns and were influenced by outside forces. And so this comes to us from Mainichi, Japan's national daily since 1922. Remember, it's the pendulum of karma. And instead of a pendulum, there's a giant scythe on the bottom. And it's like whooshing right back at us for what we did to the world during COVID, by the way. I'm not saying that COVID was real or not real, but the reaction to COVID and how it's affecting the youth is something we're going to be dealing with for a very long time. All right. And you're going to be dealing with it. Your family's going to be dealing with it. If you have kids, they're going to be dealing with it. I had 2 young kids during COVID. So by the time they enter the workforce at 20, these psycho weirdo COVID kids are going to be like their senior managers and stuff like that. I wonder if they'll be like secretly resentful. Like, oh, you don't remember, do you? Anyways, coming to us from the Mainichi, Japan's national daily since 1922, October 25th, 2024. And this is not a breaking news podcast, by the way. We're looking at trends from the recent past to now and maybe seeing how that might affect the future, especially with the Japan Society 5.0 segment. What's that? Youths argue for right to live on safe planet in climate suit against Japan firms. Now, I have, this has been unheard of for me, this Greta Thunberg style activism in Japan. It's been quite rare. And there's a picture here of the plaintiff, and her name is Katrin Miyazawa, left, and others appeal for a reduction of CO2 emissions at a press conference. And this, I guess she's, I'm not sure if she's half Japanese or not, but she's got blonde hair and it looks kind of like Ukrainian style. I'm not saying she's Ukrainian, but that style of European. Doesn't have like curly hair with a big nose, not some Italian chick, you know. Massive tits. Nagoya, the first oral proceedings in a lawsuit filed by a group of young people demanding that 10 thermal power plant operators in Japan reduce their CO2 emissions was held at the Nagoya District Court on October 24th. Yeah, it's not about oil and gas anymore. It's about thermal. So the thermal CO2 has got to go. Notice how it's like never ending. The plaintiff, 16 people in their teens to 20s across the country, claim the adverse effects of climate change infringe on the human rights of young people. The operators urged the lawsuit to be dismissed. According to the lawsuit, the 10 companies are seeking to continue coal-fired generation until 2050. It points out that this will continue to contribute to global warming and have a dangerous impact. They are demanding the firms achieve a 48% reduction in CO2 emissions by fiscal 2030 and 65% reduction by fiscal 2035 compared to 2019 levels, consistent with the United Nations Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. If that doesn't sound like a New World Order global governance scam, I don't know who you are, and these kids have got to stop sucking on the teats of the UN to get their ideas swirling around their COVID-soaked brains. The plaintiff stressed during the proceedings that judicial intervention is necessary. One of them, Katrin Miyazawa, 29, a resident of Nagoya, said, "I want the right for me and my family to live on a safe earth." And it goes on from there. So, is this the pendulum? Because one thing that's been great about living in Japan is not having to deal with this eco-activism types. But, I mean, during the lockdowns, everybody's on their phones. They start being influenced by other youth movements around the world, and these kind of people that might have very liberal-leaning parents from a homeland outside of Japan start maybe also filtering this information. Oh, you're looking at the Greta Thunberg videos? Good for you. She's really doing a good job, working hard to make the earth a better place. Unlike these billionaires who just pollute the earth and they've got to go. I have family that say stuff like that in Canada. I'm Canadian. You know what we got to do? Well, what do we got to do? Got to get rid of these billionaires. Like what? How what? Really? Yeah, they got to go. Okay. You sound totally like an insane person to me, family member. Oh, really? Oh, yeah, sure. So there we go. Noticing. Is this the pendulum of time? Are these the seeds sprouting with the roots coming up into our society due to the way they were treated? Remember, they couldn't talk in school. They had rotating school hours. They spent years in masks. They couldn't speak to their classmates. They don't know who their classmates are, but maybe they went into their phones or into the internet and found a very rich world ready for them to indoctrinate them into psychotic climate beliefs. And, you know, I grew up as an eco person. I still am. I don't like pollution, but this whole idea that the UN is going to save us if we just give them trillions of dollars so that they can shut down our infrastructure, that sounds insane to me. It's like, well, congratulations. You shut down your energy infrastructure. Here's a windmill. But how did you make that windmill? With the very same energy we're shutting down. Oh, okay. So this is a bridge to nowhere, but the bridge hasn't been built yet, and you're telling us to just jump. But we got to listen because they're teenagers, and they know better. Weird Corner. All right, before getting into the thick of it here, I just want to say congratulations to JAXA, I guess it is. Japan launches flagship H-3 rocket carrying defense satellite. There's been a lot of failed launches in Japan in the past few years, and Japan at one time was a leading, and it still is, of course, a leading space country. But China has far outstripped Japan, and we're going to look at China a little bit too later, I hope. Last week I was like, we're going to do this, and we didn't do it, but who cares? Japan launched, when was this from? November 4th, 2024. This is from Mainichi, but this is from Kyoto News. So all the major services wired, Japan Daily services or not Japan Daily, but all the daily news sites in Japan are carrying this news right now. Japan launched a flagship H-3 rocket carrying a Defense Ministry communications satellite Monday, its third consecutive successful liftoff following a botched debut in 2023. The H3 series is the successor to the country's current mainstay H2A vehicle, which has supported Japan's space development for over 20 years and will be retired after a final launch. The number 4 H3 rocket will place the defense satellite in an orbit at an altitude of around 36,000 kilometers. The satellite, along with 2 others already in operation, is intended to enhance communications for the country's self-defense forces. The rocket developed by the Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency and Mitsubishi Heavy Industries lifted off the Tanegashima Space Center in the southwestern prefecture of Kagoshima. The launch was initially scheduled for October 20th, but blah, blah, blah. And there we go. So 36,000 kilometers. What is the geosynchronous orbit to Earth? How far is that out? I just realized it might be that. Is that geosynchronous orbit or geostationary? Geosynchronous orbit height. Let's just figure it out. 35,786 kilometers approximately. So it looks like this geostationary. What's geostationary? Is there there's a difference? Should we get into it? Is that what we should really learn today? Geostationary orbit is 35,786. So this defense satellite isn't quite geostationary, but it's around that area. So I think it's probably meant to kind of hover around Japan. So what is the difference between geosynchronous orbit and geostationary orbit? I'm kind of curious. I love space stuff. Let's figure it out. And this is Evil Google AI telling us. AI Overview by Google. Geosynchronous orbit. A satellite in geosynchronous orbit orbits the Earth and appears in the same region of the sky throughout the day. It has an orbital period of 23 hours, 56 minutes, and 4 seconds, and is at an altitude of approximately 35,786 kilometers. A satellite in geostationary orbit orbits the Earth's equator and appears in the same position in the sky throughout the day. It has an orbital period of 1 sidereal day and is at an altitude of approximately 35,786 kilometers. So that's the same. Geostationary satellites are used for communication, disaster management, and climate forecasting. Antennas don't need to move. However, they have incomplete geographical coverage because it's difficult for ground stations at high latitudes to receive signals. I'm not sure why it's going on from there, but anyways, you get a little bit of a difference. I think the key point is that it's at the Earth's equator, whereas a geosynchronous orbit doesn't need to be at the Earth's equator. So when somebody says geosynchronous, it means not at the equator. And when it says geostationary, it means at the equator. According to this podcaster who just looked it up right now and is relying on Google AI to deliver me the news, it's good enough for me. It's probably good enough for you. All right, let's move on to the next topic. Last week, I was talking a lot about nuclear and how a lot of nuclear power is restarting in Japan and how the stock price of uranium had been increasing at the time. And it's kind of fluctuated since, but there's been an overall increase. And a lot of major AI companies like Microsoft and NVIDIA and other such behemoths, titans of industry, are saying that they need nuclear power to power their AI data centers. And so that's caused a massive swing in favor of nuclear power and a lot of investment in that area. Now, Japan has nuclear power plants peppered throughout the country. A lot of them are getting a little bit old, considering that they originally were planned for 30 or 40 years of use, and some of them are being extended to 50. But a lot of them were shut down after the Fukushima disaster in 2011, understandably so. It's really quite something to live a few hundred kilometers away from a nuclear power plant and to see it explode on TV or on internet clips and go, I think I'm going to leave the town for a while because I don't know what this means. The roof flies off. You're like, that's rather serious because it's a nuclear power plant. And there's been an effort to restart them because of global instability in the supply chains. Again, that goes back to COVID. It goes back to the current administration in the United States, how weak they are and how pithy they are. And I'm never sure if they're trying to lead or just trying to profit. Maybe it's more of the latter, but we don't know. It could just be sheer incompetence. It could be the fact that some of them are so old and so embedded in Washington that they haven't really seen the light of day for like 50 years, and and they think that like Russia is still some backwater hole that's like just crawled out of the era of communism. But go to Russia these days, and I've seen a lot of travel videos. Like a lot of it looks pretty darn nice. And they're starting up with the BRICS and competing with Western G7 nations on a very competitive level. And they say, well, look at the GDP. Yeah, but the cost of living's a lot lower as well. And it goes on and on from there. And recently, just as an aside, with the BRICS meeting in the central Tatarstan capital there in Central Asia, that is a kind of a power move by BRICS, because if a whole bunch of nations can agree to build up Central Asia and to an extent the Far East of Europe, they would be able to create a massive landmass of cooperation in an economic zone that's rife with minerals and materials and rivers and climate, good climate. They could really start to compete against the United States on that type of geographical favor. So there's been a massive effort to kind of quash any serious development that's going on there. But with BRICS just meeting in that area, it's kind of a message to say, yeah, we're going ahead with this area and we're going to develop it. Whether it happens or not, it's one thing or another. But anyways, so with the nuclear power going on in Japan here, there's a lot of NIMBYism and activism towards the nuclear power, not in my backyard NIMBY, those types, where they try to restart a nuclear power plant, but a group of activists will say, well, show us the escape routes in case the nuclear meltdown happens. And they show the escape routes and they say, well, look, if this happens, we can't escape via this route, so you can't start your nuclear power plant. And then they have to go back to square one and start reviewing. So there's like this bureaucratic interventionism by the activists, and maybe participatory on some level on the inside as well. Maybe they've had relatives affected negatively by the Fukushima disaster. I'm just speculating at this point, but there's like an effort at the top to get these nuclear power plants going, but there's also a lot of muck in the middle that's preventing them from going ahead as planned. So reactor in Japan's 2011 disaster area halted just days after restart. So I just wanted to kind of follow up from last week. I'm not trying to be Mr. Nuclear here, and I'm not trying to say invest now and the riches shall be yours. It's there's a lot of back and forth. Sendai, a nuclear reactor in the northeastern Japan area, was halted Monday for checks, the plant operator said, just days after it became the first to restart in the region since the 2011 earthquake and tsunami disaster. Tohoku Electric Power Co., TEPCO, this is Tokyo Electric Power Co., so I'm not sure if that's different actually than TEPCO, sorry, is facing difficulties in sending in a device to confirm the condition of the number 2 reactor at the Onagawa plant in Miyagi Prefecture. The reactor last Tuesday joined a dozen others in the country that have been rebooted after meeting more stringent safety standards imposed in the wake of the Fukushima Daiichi nuclear power plant crisis. Tohoku Electric Power said it planned to restart the generator and transmission on Sunday. The restart of the reactor marked the first time in Japan that a boiling water reactor, the same type as the Fukushima Daiichi reactors, had been brought online since the disaster. The number 2 reactor cleared safety screening on February 2020 and gained local consent to resume operation, and so on and so forth. So it's not exactly smooth sailing. I just wanted to amend the topic from last week and say, yeah, it's not exactly going forward as planned. There are some bumps along the road. Let's do Japan Society 5.0.
The fourth industrial revolution will enable us to create a new society. Artificial intelligence will transform the big data collected through the Internet of Things into new wisdom. Society 5.0. A technology-based, human-centered society. fourth industrial revolution will raise our standard of living and solve various challenges we face. It will, for example, free us from the stress of driving, allowing us to safely visit anyone, anytime. We will have access to the latest medical advancements at a low cost, no matter where we are. AI and robots will enhance human ability and expand our infinite possibilities, helping us enjoy more fulfilling lives. Society 5.0 for the betterment of human lives.
That's right. So, of course, that's the Japan government's promo video theme song for Japan Society 5.0, a kind of all-encompassing look at how the current technology being developed, wireless, algorithms, AI, you name it, can be implemented into society. So it's not exactly a sales perspective. It's more of like infrastructural levels. And I worked in big tech from 2015 to 2020. It's been a long time since then now, 4 years, but I keep up with it by analyzing these trends, following the markets more so than anything else. I always say that there's like two sides of the AI crazy coin that get the lion's share of attention. One side being that AI is going to become our friends and then take our jobs before screwing our wives and killing us. And that's kind of a defeatist, catastrophist point of view. Although the jobs thing is certainly tallying up right now, I'm looking for work, and the amount of AI involved in the job screening process right now, it's detrimental actually, because it's just random. But anyways, the other side of the crazy coin is the useless consumer products that get uploaded into our devices that just encourage us to tap on our phones or engage in our devices instead of the world around us. Like, for example, Google Intelligence or Apple Intelligence, we write 2 + 2 on a device and we put an equal sign and it will automatically write 4. And it's like, wow, that's amazing, but nobody's really going to be using it. So I try to look at the AI markets and how it's being implemented into the world around us, because that's going to affect me and my family, and it's going to be affecting you and your family as well. And this one, the first one for today, and a lot of this stuff I research in Japanese and use AI translators to translate it into English. And at the end of the podcast, I have a song that I write by having AI make lyrics out of all the headlines, and I put it into an AI song generator as a review. So it's kind of interesting as well, I hope. But the thing about a lot of the Japanese stuff is that the best stuff comes from blogs and PR documents, and they have a very different way of writing, and they have a very different way of writing headlines. But this is the first one. GPS-equipped shoes that allow AI robots to pinpoint the location of wandering elderly people, promoting the appeal of nursery work. Now, AI and IoT devices in hospitals are going to be a game changer, because you can have all the sensors in a bed, and on your body, and instead of having nurses write it down and they might make mistakes, a doctor can walk by with an iPad and the doctor can just see all your vitals without having to consult the paper, which might have errors in it and stuff like that. But of course, if they're just sensors and the sensors are getting more and more specific, why not put the sensors in hospital patients' clothing or in their shoes? Why not? If we're already going this far, well, why not put it in their food? The 11th of this month is Caregiving Day. Did you know that? Designated by the Ministry of Health, Labor, and Welfare as a play on words that translates good day, every day, thank you for the warm caregiving. It makes no sense to me either. In the run-up to this day, an event was held to promote the appeal of caregiving work in an effort to resolve the chronic shortages of human resources in the caregiving field. This comes to us, where does it come to us from? yahoonews.co.jp from the 4th of November. The Caregiving Day Festival is held annually by welfare organizations in the prefecture, and this year marks the 12th time it has been held. At the venue, the latest equipment to support caregiving work was on display, including a robot that uses AI to communicate with the elderly, never a good idea, and GPS-equipped shoes that can pinpoint the location of wandering elderly people. Great idea. There was also a corner where visitors could sit in a wheelchair and experience the value of caregiving, as well as a booth where visitors could receive advice on obtaining qualifications, such as a care worker. And the event staff were conveying the appeal and rewards of caregiving work. That's the article, kind of dancing around the issues there to put on the shoes aspect of it. But wandering elderly people are a problem, and it's about time we started tracking them to this level. I heard of a kind of an interesting German example, very low tech, but a lot of these wandering elderly people have dementia or Alzheimer's, and they get confused from the whereabouts where they are in. And they run out of the hospital and they start looking for a bus stop. And then these elderly people get on a bus, and then the bus takes them away. And there's a whole kerfuffle involved with that. So this German caregiving facility just put a fake bus stop outside of their front door. The elderly with dementia person, or that's not the right way to say it, but who cares? In this case, you get it. Runs out of the hospital. They sit down on the bench, wait for a bus. It doesn't come. 15 minutes goes by, and their dementia-riddled brain starts restarting at the 0000 mark, as if it's a tape recorder. And they wait for somebody, and an administrator or a nurse comes out, says, "How are you doing there?" And they take them back in. They also do this with salarymen at some of the major firms in Japan. No, they don't. But they might. I know that Chinese schools will put sensors into the kids' school uniforms to track them as they go through the school, make sure that they're attending class on time. Then that data can be sent to their parents, but as well as to all the other parents of a class, so you can see if anyone's playing truant and with whom. Interesting, huh? Total surveillance society. This stuff also goes just beyond basic tech, because when we think about medical usages of AI, you might have a massive amount of data being analyzed, for example, to see if a transplant should be given to which person where. It could be like, your genetics. It could be your blood type. It could be family, and it could be based on need and stuff like that. So you just might get an organ transplant, but there might have been AI and some layer of that decision-making process that got you that specific transplant in the hopes that it would reject at a lower frequency. Because, I mean, you might reject it, but if it works out that there's like a 10% increase in adoption rate from organs, then that's a major reason why a hospital would consider purchasing and implementing this AI thing into their system. So anyways, moving on to organ transplants. Japan's first organ xenotransplant for fetuses with kidney disease proposed by research team. This comes to us from a month ago. I had never heard about it. But this is about transplanting pig organs or animal organs into humans. Of course, we've had like certain aspects of like ligaments and things like that, or a knee ligament might come from an animal and you stitch it onto your knee and now you're walking around again. But we're talking about, like in this case, hearts, kidneys, all sorts of other things. And there's even some research going in that suggests that we could take your DNA and splice it into a pig's DNA, where the pig would grow some of your organs, and then the pig is born or is raised a little bit, and then you extract the organs from the pig, but they're not pig organs because it's been spliced with your genome, so they're your organs, but they were grown in a pig, and now they put them inside of you, and some weirdo comes by and tries to chop you up and turn you into bacon. No. A team of researchers from institutions including the GK University School of Medicine in the Japanese capital on October 4th submitted to the university's special committee a clinical research plan for pig kidney transplants to human fetuses. We are getting into the weeds. If performed, it will be the first case of interspecies organ transplants, or xenotransplantation, in Japan. Amid a shortage of human donors, there's no shortage, we just don't have access to the Uyghurs because the Chinese are not sharing. Amid a shortage of human donors, the method is hoped to be a game changer for organ transplants. While this case is just a temporary bridge transplant until babies can receive dialysis and await human organ donations, it remains a new step forward for transplantation in the country. The research plan calls for transplants to 2 fetuses with a serious condition called Potter sequence, in which not fully formed kidneys lead to a lack of ability to produce urine. The disease is identified by low amniotic fluid in the womb and affects 1 in 5,000 to 10,000 children at birth. In the most severe cases, death occurs immediately after birth. In such a situation, it is difficult to transplant kidneys because they have not yet grown. After birth, peritoneal dialysis and other symptomatic treatments are performed, but there is no fundamental cure for the disease. Because kidney transplants are difficult for these newborns, the pig organs will be used temporarily until the babies are able to use dialysis. The first step is to take the roughly 2 millimeter sized parts of kidneys from pig fetuses and, using a special injection method, transplant them into human fetuses 4 weeks before birth. At the time of birth, the newborn's blood vessels will reportedly connect with the transplanted organs, growing them to 10 times their original size and allowing the production of urine. The urine will be excreted through a tube inserted into the baby's backs. Human bodies interpret pig organs as a foreign body, causing a strong rejection response. However, the research team hopes the use of immune-suppressing medicines can be lowered, stating, quote, "It is the endothelial cells of the blood vessels that strongly reject a transplanted organ. But in these cases, the fetal blood vessels will enter the kidneys, so rejection is suppressed." Once the fetuses develop normally and the newborns reach their 2nd or 3rd weeks of life, the pig organs will be removed and the use of immunosuppressants will cease. The babies will then switch to dialysis treatment and wait for human organ transplants as their safety and other factors are observed. It goes on from there. You can check it out, the whole article, at MatthewPMBigelow.com. MatthewPMBigelow.com. That's where you can find all the news articles that I'm reporting on today, as well as some pictures and donation methods, such as PayPal at paypal.me/JapanWUT. And I'll be providing a picture of these cute little piggies destined, hopefully, to make babies taste like bacon. No, yeah, I think it's great that if this results in babies being healthier and being able to live longer, then parents will ultimately be happy, and we can extrapolate from there and create better human life. All right, that's a nice way to say it. It's not as controversial, not as off the. I'm trying to be controversial because I'm on a podcast. Next article. Moving on. Toyota and NTT. NTT is a telecommunications company in Japan. To invest $3.3 billion. 33 is a very magic number. If you've been in the news long enough, like I have, 33. To invest $3.3 billion on development of AI platform. Coming to us from Reuters, but via Asahi.com. Toyota Motor and Nippon Telegraph Telephone, NTT, plan to invest a total of 500 billion yen by 2030 into an infrastructure and software platform using AI to reduce traffic accidents. The automaker and telecommunications firm said in a joint statement on Thursday, they want to develop a mobility AI platform that uses large amounts of data to support driver assist technology. The joint push comes at a time when Japanese automakers are facing pressure to step up their efforts in the growing autonomous driving market, which is increasingly dominated by Tesla and Chinese firms. Toyota and NTT said they hope the platform will help with things such as preventing accidents caused by poor visibility in urban areas, supporting automated driving services, and making it easier to merge on expressways. So $3.3 billion, no joke. I know that Toyota and SoftBank, where I worked at, they had a joint venture called Monet, Mobility Network, but I'm not sure if it took off or, NTT has like ties to the history of being involved with the Japanese government. It was spun out to create a private industry, but is it? And Toyota as well has some long history there. So $3.3 billion. I think the Monet between SoftBank, major telecommunications firm in Japan, and Toyota was something like $20 million, but this is far exceeding that. And so, of course, Toyota might want to install these technologies into all of its cars all over Japan, and then NTT would provide their network services to help with connecting their cars to their internet. Hopefully it works out well, their 5G protocols. But I've seen some of these self-driving cars do pretty miraculous things. And one thing to like consider how they view is that we view like with our eyes, and we're constantly looking around. Oh, slow down. Oh, speed up. Oh, look this way before turning left. Oh, look that way before turning right. But the AI camera is processing, the AI computer in a self-driving car is processing the imagery all around it, all of it simultaneously by the pixel. So all of the pixels in a screen is being comprehended by the AI machine in the car. This doesn't mean that it's a magical thing and it doesn't have any setbacks to it, but it's able to understand what's happening behind it, in front of it, and beside it all at the same time. So you might like be turning like left and you look right and there's no car, but then you look left and you start turning out, but a car comes out from behind another car and starts speeding up and it's about to crash into you. You don't see it because you've just checked, but the car sees it and it stops automatically because it recognized the pixelization of a car speeding through its pixels. So it registers a speed and it registers where it is and it stops the car, and that car will then go past and avoid the accident. I've seen stuff like that, and the car will just do it. So the appeal is there, the technology is there, and a lot of the times the news media will be like, oh, look, this car is self-driving, screwed up. And everybody goes, ha ha, what a stupid technology. I'll never get into one. But I mean, if you were born in like 1880 and by 1920 or 30, there's planes everywhere, it's a similar type of thing where it just gets spread out whether you like it or not. That's the theme for the podcast here. This is spreading, whether you like it or not. We can talk about the philosophical ramifications of labeling something as intelligence. Is it intelligence? It's spreading whether you like it or not. We can be like, oh, it's going to take my job. But it's spreading whether you like it or not. It's going to kill humanity. It's spreading whether you like it or not. Let's take a look at this next one. Kind of going into facial recognition with the topic of cameras here. Revista develops a system that uses facial recognition to control entrance and exit using workers' smartphones. So Revista has developed a smartphone app that allows construction workers to register their entry and exit records using facial recognition on their smartphones. Revesta announced on October 25th, 2024, that it has developed a smartphone app for the entrance and exit management app, Kaoreko. Kaoreko would mean recognizing your face or recording your face. Kao meaning face. Now, the fact that it's an app bothers me. Of the construction site management service, Buildy, that allows foremen and skilled workers of partner companies to use their own smartphones to register their entrance and exit records at the site using facial recognition. This makes it easier to introduce entrance and exit management using facial recognition, even at small construction sites where it is difficult to install stationary authentication devices. The app is now available on the App Store and Google Play Store. I'll be posting a diagram of how this works. It kind of uses geofencing as well. The newly developed entrance and exit management app allows the technician to read a QR code issued by a main contractor with their own smartphone and perform facial recognition. Based on GPS information obtained from the technician's smartphone, facial recognition can only be performed within the area set by the main contractor. If the technician is invited to multiple construction positions within the construction site, options are displayed when facial recognition is successful, and the technician can choose which construction position to enter as. All right. Oh, I have to register to continue reading. But I think we all get the idea here. Instead of having people stopping cars and taking records and maybe license plates, you take a picture of your face in a geofenced area. And if your face is registered to be in that area, you're allowed to proceed. If not, you might have security chase down your truck or your car, or you might be... you might have a lot of your time wasted by having to go through a rigmarole of people chasing you down. I'm not sure about having this on an app, though, on my phone. Like, why does my phone have to be a surveillance device for my work? I mean, I'm paying for it. I'm paying for the data. I'm paying for the contract. I'm paying for the whole thing. Why does it have to be on my end so that the company doesn't have to hire people to manage this type of thing. Like, I should get a cut. They should have some sort of revenue sharing service where if I get this on my phone, I get like, even if it's like $3 a month or something, or some sort of, you go to the convenience store, you get a free coffee, some sort of point back system. And because I'm using my network, I'm paying for the network, I'm paying for the data, I'm paying for the phone. Why should the company have access to that? Unless it's the company phone. If the company issues the phone, well, then that's another thing. That's fine. But it shouldn't be on my phone, because who knows what else it's accessing in my phone. Oh, it's not accessing anything. I don't know. Is it? Maybe not now. What if somebody else buys it up and expands the terms and conditions of using it? Now you have to upload your contacts. Now you have to upload where you were before. Now you have to upload your locations 20, 30, or 40 minutes, how you got there, and then it sells that data into like some mapping service, Navitime type of thing, where they use it to use predictive programming to tell cars where else to go. But it's all being bought and sold. So am I just creating data that can be purchased by third parties just because the company doesn't want to hire someone to note down a time and place where I come and go, and it becomes on me? Like, that's the thing. And I really get angry about it, because that's just where it starts. That's where the relationship begins. And where does it end? We really don't know, but it pushes more in that direction. It's like, oh no, we're not going to call you. We're just going to make sure we know where you are by having you scan your face, but you have to download this app onto your phone. It's a little dirty in my opinion. Moving on. Fukuoka Green Grocer uses facial recognition to shut out shoplifters. And this has been a common tactic on getting smaller stores to invest in this technology, because a lot of the times in Japan, people will put a bunch of cheap stuff at the front of their shop to get people to come into the shop, or just to sort of push a bunch of, cheaper goods, and it's a revenue stream. But people steal it, especially if it's around a corner. So these tech companies are kind of pushing smaller operators to invest in this technology by saying, hey, you buy one camera and it's like $20 a month, and you position it where people are stealing your stuff. When people come there and start acting suspiciously, like looking around furtively, the hood over their head, it notifies you on your phone, and you go there and you ask them if they need help. And if they are there honestly, they will ask for help, or if they're not, they will leave. That type of thing. So it's been going on for quite a while. And I've heard some people have good results about this, where they say they're saving like hundreds of dollars a month. So this is a case of like good surveillance, because it's on your shop. Maybe you should be surveilling it. And if it's on your phone, if it's your shop, well, it's your money. So you're getting more money. So this is kind of a thing where it would benefit. It's the same technology as the other phone thing, but in this case, the application would be beneficial to somebody on a small scale. A green grocer in Kasuya, where is this coming to us from? Nikkei.com. A green grocer in Kasuya, Fukuoka Prefecture, has opened an unmanned store that uses facial recognition to unlock its entrance, and this is creating a buzz. The system identifies customers who have shoplifted or caused trouble by comparing their faces with security camera footage, and will deny them entry the next time. The Tokyo startup that developed the system aims to expand nationwide, taking advantage of the low cost of opening stores while strengthening the security aspect, which is a weakness of unmanned stores. In late October, people of all ages and genders, all of them, how many are there, flocked to the unmanned store located a 1 minute walk from JR Haramachi Station in Kasuya Town. All the genders were flocking there. Are you sure, Nikkei? Were all the genders flocking there on October 29th? But good for them. And unmanned stores are great. I mean, like 20 or 30 years ago, it required quite a bit of know-how to operate a lot of cash registers. But now it's just you scan a gun on a barcode. And even if there's coupons for it, you just scan it and it correlates it with what you're buying and applies the coupon automatically. So I don't like having in some cases it's nice, but in a lot of cases, unmanned stores are awesome. Not having somebody touch all the stuff that you're just buying, especially if they're dirty, because sometimes they're dirty. When you get a good one, it's like great because they handle everything and it's well done. You're like, oh wow, Thank you for not, wiping your hands all over the nozzles of my drinks or something like that. You made the extra effort to grab the drink by the side, not by the cap. That's kind of an issue with a certain segment of immigrant working at a lot of Japanese convenience stores. They just don't have the cultural training where they're from to be orderly and cleanly on that type of level that Japanese people naturally are. So anyways, good for them. Let's do more. Next. Kubota increases yields with automated farm machinery, reducing base station position error to 3 centimeters. So, self-driving in the sector for farming is going to be major. A lot of the times in America, it's been making a lot of sense to do this for years now, and it's led to a real shift in rural versus urban people by having these agrarian types in their tractors all day on automation mode. What they're having to do now is they just monitor to make things are okay. And they're listening to long-form history podcasts. They're listening to long-form political podcasts, mathematics, economics podcasts by professionals in their fields most of the time. And so in a 5 or 6 or 8 hour day in these tractors, they're getting like a 4 or 5 hour education every day in this stuff. And that's a big shift because before they had no time to do that. They were operating the machinery. And before that, they were backbreaking with the equipment, But in the urban types now who spend 20 or 30 minutes commuting, who are rushing around all day and who haven't really caught up with a lot of long form podcasting because they just don't have the time. It's kind of created like a dichotomy, like a shift in information access, where previously urban centers with their fine libraries were the focal points of intelligentsia, but that's been distributed through the networks and phones with the aid of the automation of agrarian equipment and for machinery and farms and things like that. So it's kind of interesting. But anyways, this is just a short article. I'll read it. Kubota will significantly improve the accuracy of location information so that autonomous agricultural machinery, not agrarian, agricultural, I think you know what I meant. It's like when your brain replaces one word with another word and it can't shift back to that other word. It plans to set up base stations nationwide by the end of 2024. The base stations will receive correction data for location information, reducing the error to about 3 centimeters. If this was on national roads, it would cause untold amounts of death and destruction. But because this would be like rice paddies or grain fields or something like that, 3 centimeters doesn't make a hell of a lot of a difference. This will enable precise operation of tractors and other equipment, increasing yields and reducing number of workers required. Because in Japan, one thing that the decreasing and plummeting population is having a major effect on is farming. Most farmers are over 75 years old. The foreigners coming in are not really committed because why would you be? You're poor in a poor area of Japan, and it's not really why you came here. Blah blah blah. The company will focus on infrastructure development and aim to popularize autonomous agricultural machinery. Normally, the location of agricultural machinery is determined using GPS, but in this case, it will be something else. But I can't read it because it's behind a paywall. Moving on. 8 knot. Okay, this is from prtimes.jp, translated from Japanese. So it's a Japanese headline, which means we got to take a deep breath. Are you ready? 8 knot, a startup developing autonomous ship operation technology, has signed an agreement with Osaki Kamijima Town, Hiroshima Prefecture, to introduce an autonomous passenger and cargo transport service and verify its effectiveness. October 29th, 2024. Okay, that's repeating the same information. So, all right, the information was being repeated, so I just found a place where it dives right in. So, autonomous ships. So this company, 8 knot, will provide automated navigation services by implementing their autonomous navigation platform, 8 knot AI Captain, which utilizes AI and robotics on existing ships. This system enables automatic navigation to destinations, obstacle avoidance, and docking and undocking, contributing to improved navigation safety and reducing the workload of crew members. The introduction will also contribute to solving the issues of remote island regions where the declining birth rate, aging population, and population decline are particularly noticeable. In Osaki Kamijima-cho, Hiroshima Prefecture, where the service will be introduced, transportation options outside of ferry operating hours are limited, and this autonomous passenger and cargo transport service will greatly improve convenience for local residents as a means of transportation in the early morning and at night. In terms of logistics, the service will also expand the home delivery service of the Hiroshima Consumers Cooperative Union, enabling products to be delivered to the secondary remote island of Ikunoshima, improving the living environment for residents. That's pretty good. Just a robot ship appears full of goods. Although, to be honest, I would love to have a job like that. A small crew on a ferry boat puttering between the islands of Hiroshima Prefecture on the Seto Naikai, the inland sea there. And it just smooth sailing. You deliver the goods, you sail back. Maybe you got time to do some fishing. You go home to some place near the beach and you just live a nice, simple life like that. That's a dream of mine. Imagine being able to do that. That'd be awesome. But the robots are taking that job too. Earlier, we were talking about autonomous vehicles for development in Japan by having Toyota and NTT Docomo create an AI platform, spending $3.3 billion. Another thing about the birth rate plummeting in Japan, and Japan Society 5.0 is directly linked to this because you can't just have the immigrants do it, or can you? In this next news article, it raises the issue of AI immigration in a way where if you have to develop some product, and there's a cultural aspect here, and I've talked about this before, where you have the road laws of India and you have the road laws of Japan. It's going to be very difficult to have just a bunch of Indian coders code cars that will drive according to the rules in Japan. Now, if you get the best of the best, that's fine. But if you outsource it to the middle of the road, pun intended, maybe it's not the best because, of course, you have religious differences, you have navigation differences, and once people start coding into autonomous vehicles, they are also coding their biases. And this idea is far-fetched, and I don't think it's going to happen, but I use it to illustrate the point that if you have a bunch of hardcore Hinduists who love cows, who worship cows, and they're programming your self-driving cars, will they program the car to hit a cow? So how do you screen that type of bias out of an outsourcing project? I'm not sure. But India's TCS has thousands of engineers to build AI software for Japan, from AsiaNikkei.com. Tata Group members working on projects with Nissan, Mitsubishi Electric, and others. This is behind a paywall as well, so it doesn't go in too much, but we don't really need to. India's Tata Consultancy Services is working with multiple Japanese manufacturers to develop software powered by artificial intelligence. Because of Japan's shortage of IT workers. Areas of cooperation include autonomous driving and factory automation. Senior Vice President Raghu Ayaswamy, who heads the company's Internet of Things and Digital Engineering Division, told Nikkei. So we will have a bunch of Indians programming the autonomous cars in Japan. This is an interesting idea where if a bunch of Indians... it sounds like negative when I say bunch. I just mean like if you have a group of very well-trained Indians building like some sort of what's something like a table, or let's go more advanced. Let's say a television. Let's even go more advanced and let's just say like internet router or something like that. The way that it's built isn't going to affect you. But once we get into driving and we kind of get into like the culture and we get into the idea of how we view the same things very differently. So if I say something like milestone, just as an aside, the word milestone in English has a sense of achievement to it because the Romans used milestones to indicate territory, and the wider your territory got, the more milestones you had. But to a lot of Japanese businessmen, milestone is just an itinerary. Like milestone 1 means the project should be finished at this time. Milestone 2 means the project should be finished at this time. So if I say the word milestone in terms of achievement to a Japanese person, they understand the word milestone, but they have no idea about the sense of achievement that this word naturally has embedded into it, into native speakers, because they have never heard it used in such a way on average. I would say 99.9% of the time. I've run into this situation personally, by the way, a few times. And so what about when we start programming our biases into self-driving cars? And the Hindu example is a little bit weird. I mean, like far-fetched, I would say, but it's like it drives the point home. But how can we trust this type of cross-cultural AI exchange when it's embedded into the cars that we're driving and we don't even know why they're driving in certain ways? Is this because Japan doesn't have the IT infrastructure, or are the companies just trying to save money? Is that another thing? Just some food for thought. I think this one's the last one for today. This goes to the idea of warehouse automation, which is going to be a major source of job loss. I secretly think that, one idea that I have for the reason why there's so many unemployed Chinese men and women these days, it's like, look at all these unemployed Chinese. The economy is falling because there are no jobs. I think that China has largely automated a huge percentage of its warehousing and production facilities. So you just don't need the people there anymore because it's been automated. So the companies might be making record profits and be selling record amounts of gadgets and doodles and dibbly-dows, but it just doesn't require the amount of people there. So you have a whole bunch of low-skilled people whose skills have been replaced. The threshold of the technology has been met, and so the need for human labor has been eliminated in many such cases. So we're seeing this spread to Japan as well. From newsswitch.jp, picking success rate of 94.5%, Toshiba develops new AI technology for logistics robots to automate logistics sites. Toshiba has developed an artificial intelligence technology that enables robotic hands to pick packages with a high success rate of 94.5% in order to promote automation in logistics sites. The robot has multiple suction pads and quickly changes the type and number pads appropriate for the package being picked up, ensuring that the package is picked up reliably. The company will continue with demonstrations at logistics warehouse and other locations, aiming to commercialize products incorporating the developed technology from fiscal 2026 onwards. Picking robots used in logistics warehouses have difficulty grasping a wide variety of objects with just one suction pad. On the other hand, using multiple suction pads, depending on the shape and size of the object, increases the amount of calculations, taking time and resulting in insufficient accuracy. Junichiro Oga, a fellow at Toshiba's Corporate Manufacturer Technology Center, points out, the orientation of the robot hand and the position of the suction pad needs to be calculated precisely. There are more parameters to output compared to a single pad. Toshiba's newly developed AI technology is characterized by its two-stage learning process, where to grab an object and how to grab it. First, the target object is photographed with a camera that can capture color and depth, and feature points are extracted to detect the surface that the hand can touch. Next, based on the information output from the first model, a second stage model is calculated to determine the orientation of the hand and the position to be attached. By using the first stage feature map for the second stage model, quote, some of the calculations that would have been necessary were omitted, which made it possible to speed up the process, said Oga. Furthermore, when this AI technology was used and verified using a computer, the time required to grab 4 different objects of 4 different sizes and shapes, a cardboard box, a detergent bottle, an acrylic tube, and a spray with 4 suction pads was successfully reduced to 0.47 seconds, 1/10 of the time required using conventional human methods. The success rate was 80.1%, an improvement of 6.2 percentage points. So this is something that's still ongoing. They're testing it, but they're perfecting it before it's rolled out so that when it is rolled out, there won't be ideally a bunch of mishaps that have to be then reiterated into perfection. Other such cases involved robotics firm Ocado, which is teamed up with Aeon, a Japanese major supermarket giant. And they have automated warehouses for picking groceries and whatnot. And these robots run on a grid. And underneath the grid are all these bins that have like butter and all the stuff you would find in a supermarket. And I would order something online and it sends the order to a robot. And the robot then goes across this grid and reaches down with these robotic hands with suction cups on them and gets my order ready. And then then it's delivered to like a wrapping robot. And then it's put into a truck and the truck drives for where we're going to go. My house, apparently. So these things are expanding, but I would say that the reason why Japan is probably taking a bit longer is because Japan has so many different styles of small goods, and the variety might be a little challenging for the robots. And also the Japanese consumer threshold for goods is very high. So if these robots start like nicking labels, Japanese people will complain. Or nobody would use it another time. They would say, oh yeah, it was nice, but it scratched my label on the bottle of wine I was ordering, so I don't think I'll get it again. There's like this real perfection from the Japanese consumer that needs to be met. So I'm glad that in this case, it's being done by domestic researchers as opposed to international researchers, because this is the culture that I'm trying to explain here. If an Indian person might not care if like a little nick happens on a label of wine, like not a glass being chipped or something like that, just like there's a tiny little scratch on the label. But a Japanese person will look at that and go, that's not nice. That's not what I ordered. Why are they breaking the stuff I ordered? They shouldn't be doing that. And they wouldn't order it again. A person I know used to work for Coca-Cola, and in Japan they have investments in some certain wine industries or some connections. I don't know if they're investments. I'm just covering my ass right now. But employees would get access to auctions of goods that were damaged prior to delivery. And it was like the tiniest little scratch on the back of a bottle of wine. And this bottle of wine would be like 5,000 yen or $50 or whatever, reduced to like 700 yen or like $7 or something like that. And it was fine to drink. It didn't have any impact on the taste. But that's just the demand of the Japanese consumer, and the logistics robotic services in Japan understand this, and this is the threshold that they need to meet before they can start replacing all of their young men with robots. And I think that's going to be it for Japan Society 5.0 for today.
The fourth industrial revolution will enable us to create a new society. Artificial intelligence will transform the big data collected through the Internet of Things into new wisdom. Society 5.0, a technology-based, human-centered society.
Whoa. All right, and I wanted to just take a look at what China is doing. I still believe that there's a supply chain war. A couple of headlines about that before we look at China. Japan government-backed agency opens Kiev office to promote trade and business. I'm sure that's going to go swimmingly well, and it's especially going to improve Japan's relationships with its own neighbors here, China and Russia. Wary of Japan's Asia NATO proposal, neighboring countries stick with web of, this is from UPI.com, web of alternatives to deter China. So Japan's been pushing with this Asian NATO idea, but I think a lot of other countries in Asia want to play both games. They want to be part of BRICS, but they also want to be part of the G7, just as a trade like a trade route. They're not really interested in the ideological components. And Japan and EU announced security and defense partnership. I don't think that the EU are going to do shiznap for Japan. They can barely do anything for themselves. They've totally failed protecting Ukraine. Why would they send their ships to protect Japan? This might have to do with military know-how being shared or implemented, but it also might have to do with just sending more selling, just sales. I'm not sure, but EU is not doing well at all, and their countries are going down. And I'm not sure if Japan should be necessarily making these arrangements with them, because it might not be good for a long-term decision. I don't know if these lawmakers and everything still have like European, goggles on, where it's portrayed as some sort of bastion of freedom and economic powerhouses. Germany's shut down its nuclear power plants. Nord Stream's cut off. They're shutting down their chemical plants. I think that Germany has plans to shut down a bunch of Volkswagen plants. Meanwhile, Russia and China are planning to open up a bunch of VW plants based on China's partnership with VW called Jetta back in Russia and stuff like this. So we're seeing a lot of economic tomfoolery on behalf of the EU right now. And they're more focused on putting people in jail for Facebook posts and being total greenies and making everything as Islamo-friendly as possible, which is fine if that's what they want to do, but it's not exactly some sort of lighthouse of economic opportunity for Japan. All right, let's take a quick look at China before we finish up for the day.
Here we go.
Just continuing along with the idea of conflict, Chinese Navy holds first dual aircraft carrier drills in South China Sea. This comes to us from scmp.com, which is a mouthpiece essentially for the South China Morning Post. It used to be more independent, but I think it's from Hong Kong, and now that means it's just mouthpiece for the CCP. The Chinese Navy's two active aircraft carriers, the Liaoning and the Shandong, have completed their first dual carrier exercise in the South China Sea. The report did not give details of the drills, but it included footage showing multiple J-15 fighter jets taking off from the Liaoning, with at least a dozen of the warplanes taking part in live combat drills. The two aircraft carriers were also shown sailing side by side. I think these aircraft carriers are the type that they're not straight for the ramp for the planes to take off. They're angled, so they don't have the electromagnetic rails to drag the planes and fling them into the air. Military commentator and former PLA instructor Song Zhongping said the dual carrier formation offered a significant force multiplier effect. He said the strength of the aircraft carriers was mainly to do with the number of aircraft, adding that the combined air power and strike force of the Liaoning and Shandong exceeded that of some small or medium militaries. Song noted that the two carrier groups also had different early warning systems in supporting destroyers and frigates that give them different air defense, anti-submarine, and anti-ship capabilities. Quote, "It is not merely a case of 1 + 1 is greater than 2. It's far greater than that," Song said, adding that the two aircraft carriers would be more effective by operating together. So that, projection of power in the South China Sea by China is ramping up. It's ongoing. My opinion about the war in Ukraine is that Russia wanted to peel off that area of Ukraine because it's very good for industrial applications, very good for minerals. It also has more access to the Black Sea via Crimea, which they already had. But it's not some ideological mission. And same thing with China's attempted takeover, de facto takeover of the South China Sea. It's so that they can create new supply chain routes. So for me, this is all about supply chain routes. It's about acquiring and maintaining and developing and eliminating the US dollar from as many supply trade routes as possible. So with the expansion of BRICS and holding it in the Tatarstan capital, I can't remember, Kazan or something like that, and having Russia peel off big parts of Ukraine for its industrial capacity, in my opinion. China looking to commandeer the South China Sea for the supply chain routes, all of that stuff. For me, this is more about supply chains and removing the US dollar from the supply chains, because they're tired of living under what have become Harvard and Yale Greta Thunberg-style activists that just willy-nilly flip all of the rules and tell everybody else what they can and cannot do with their own futures based on the current short-term vision that the United States leadership is holding at that point. So they have a longer-term vision, whether it's successful or not. It's certainly more authoritarian in nature, but that's not to say that the G7 nations have not also become more authoritarian with their green vision futures and their gender vision futures and all that frankly anger most of the world around them, but they don't even realize it because they're just in their own bubbles all the time. But these other countries are saying, we just want to work on these supply chain routes so that we can make money and maybe gain power and maybe maintain power for ourselves instead of handing it over to third-party interests. That is China. Oh, wait, no, it's not. The last one. China says it's ready to launch the next crew to its orbiting space station early Wednesday. So, of course, Japan has an advanced space industry, but China has recently surpassed most countries around the world, and they're even building their own space stations. October 29th from the Mainichi, Japan. China said all systems are ready to launch the next crew to its orbiting space station early Wednesday, the latest mission to make the country a major space power. The 2 men and 1 woman will replace the astronauts who've lived on the Tiangong space station for the last 6 months. The new mission commander, Kai Zhuzhe, went to space in the Shenzhou 14 mission in 2022, while the other 2, Song Lingdong and Wang Haoze, are first-time space travelers, both born in the 1990s. Song was an Air Force pilot and Wang an engineer with the China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation, who will be the crew's payload specialist. Wang will be the 3rd Chinese woman aboard a crewed mission. The 3 appeared at a brief news conference Tuesday behind protective glass, declaring their intention to carry out their scientific projects on the space station and bring pride to the fatherland. The Shenzhou 19 spaceship carrying the trio is due to launch from the Xinquang Space Launch Center in northwest China atop a Langmach 2F rocket, the backbone of China's crewed space missions. Launch time is set for 4:27 a.m., according to the space agency's spokesperson, Ling Xiqiang. I'm not going to go into the... But anyways, China has its eyes on the South China Sea. It also has its eyes on the moon. It also has its eyes on communism in space. Not a joke. They view getting into the moon and getting into space ahead of the United States as some way to project power from space back to Earth, but also to project the power of the Chinese Communist Party as being far superior than that of anywhere else on Earth. It's great for branding purposes, and once you're the first to go out and do it and start creating a supply chain of space minerals from space to the moon to the Earth, unless you sabotage that like a Nord Stream attack, then it kind of sets you as like a top dog in some sort of way that's irrefutable to the rest of the nation. And it also sets a human mark in human history as to the capabilities of what your society is able to do. So we see all these reports that China is falling and it's kind of crumbling and all its housing is down and the people are on the streets. Yet, at the same time, they are advancing in the latest technologies at a rapid pace, far beyond than the rest of the world combined in a lot of fields and a lot of areas, and space is part of that. Also, I've been watching a lot of YouTube travel documentaries, and India, which is like touted by the G7 as like kind of a competitor to China, not even close. India looks like a really crazy place. It's dirty. It's scammy. It's unhealthy. They got so many people there that there's going to be enough talented people that they can export like a middle class around the world, like what the Philippines kind of did in the 90s. But compared to China, China's clean. Their trains are really good. China's cleaner, I would say, but it's rapidly developing in a way that a normal human mind would envision the future. With the current technologies being provided to us, good or not, China is rapidly deploying them and is making use of them far more than almost anywhere else on Earth. The only other person or place that's competitive in this nature is Elon Musk. Love him or hate him, that's the only really other example that we have. So that is another aspect of the supply chain wars. Supply chain wars in space.
Here we go.
All right, before we wrap up here, remember that I always finish the podcast with an AI song based on all the headlines from the today's podcast. So I put it into Grok to make lyrics. Then I put it into suno.com to make the song. I add some alterations to make sure it's all good. And then I play it for the end here. So please remember to go to MatthewPMBigelow.com. Please remember to make a donation at paypal.me/JapanWUT. You can also use Podcasting 2.0 infrastructure to send Bitcoin and boosts through the apps themselves. So to get involved, just maybe download a Fountain app or download Podverse app, or just look for Podcasting 2.0 and get yourself involved. It's good to have a backup, because a lot of places like Spotify and Apple remove podcasts if they get a little spicy or for whatever reason. So this is a type of podcast infrastructure that's not based on censorship, but it's based on open source protocols. So I'm just kind of giving it a plug. All right. Until next time, everybody, I wish thee, MatthewPMBigelow.com. Go there. Happy and warmful and joyful. Ja Mata.
Johnny Somali in the news with a chick who's quite the muse. 100 dudes in one day, must be the COVID craze. The pendulum of karma is swinging back. A giant scythe ready to attack. In a world gone wild, where logic's been defiled, the Japan What Podcast looks at the chains in our supplies. We're arguing for planets, suing firms in Japan, launching rocket satellites on the Japan What Podcast. Japan's back with reactors, but they're halting, not a factor. Xenotransplants for fetuses, that's a Society 5's new chapter. Toyota and NTT, spending billions, don't you see? AI's not the future, it's happening right now on the Japan What Podcast. Facial recognition at the grocery, shoplifters get so nosy. Autonomous ships, GPS shoes, where's our privacy? Kubota's machines, precision in the field, so green, so green. Toshiba's robots picking with a 94.5% accuracy, that's the dream. The pendulum of karma is swinging back. A giant scythe ready to attack. China's navy's flexing, dual carriers in the sea. Space station's next crew launching with deep pride. India's TCS, engineers by the score, building AI for Japan. The cars are going to crash into people instead of cows. What's going on the Japan What Podcast? On the Japan What Podcast? On the Japan What Podcast? Japan's back with reactors, but they're halting, not a factor. Xenotransplants for fetuses, that's Society 5's new chapter. Toyota and NTT, spending billions, don't you see? AI's not the future, it's happening right now on the Japan What Podcast. Facial recognition at the grocery, shoplifters get so nosy. Autonomous ships, GPS shoes, where's our privacy? Kubota's machines, precision in the field, so green, so green. Toshiba's robots picking with a 94.5% accuracy, that's the dream. On the Japan